Ooh. Ooh. Oh, what a night. Son of a... Well, it's that time of year again. It's time for me to pick the best and worst of 2024. So I'm going to keep this real short and sweet, so let's just jump right in, shall we? Number 10. Thelma was a surprise for me. I did not see this one coming. I like June Squibb from other films like Nebraska, and I was really curious about this because I was told she basically plays an action hero, but she doesn't really jump around and do, action like John Wick. It's a lot more comedic.
What?
I didn't say anything.
June Squibb plays a 94-year-old woman who gets scammed by some internet scamsters for $10,000, and she has to track it down and get her money back. And she goes along on this adventure with Richard Roundtree in his last role. And they go to get the money back, and hilarity ensues. It's also a very warm and touching movie, so it's not all comedy, but it's got some, tugs on your heartstrings a little bit. And they do a lot of takes on a lot of action tropes, and they do it from a senior point of view. June Squibb is great in it. Richard Roundtree is great. A lot of laughs, a lot of heart. Highly recommend Thelma. Number 9. I knew I wanted to have this on the list, but I wasn't sure where, so right now it's going to sit at number 9. But I really liked Honora by Sean Baker. I'm not going to genuinely say I fell in love with this movie like a lot of people say they did. That's fine if you did. For me, I'm still thinking about it, and it's been a day later, and I'm still trying to process a lot of things about it, especially the ending, no spoilers. But Mikey Madsen really knocks it out of the park, and she's so damn interesting to watch in this movie, and I just don't know what to say about it. But it's still rolling around up there. Honora is about a sex worker played by Mikey Madsen who marries a young Russian rich guy, and the romance is great at first. But then plot happens. I won't say anything else because that would be terrible to ruin this movie for you.
My wife.
Well, you did tell them, right?
Иванжан, открой дверь, пожалуйста.
Vanya, should I call 911?
Ты женился на какой-то проститутке?
What?
Это она? Иван!
You do not know this guy.
Vanya?
It's a fraud marriage, and we're getting in an old
fraud
NS.
The performances are what hold this together, and honestly, I can't even say performances because it's all Mikey Madsen. So direction and acting, top notch. The story is engaging enough, it's interesting enough, and it'll have you guessing and following along with it. Take my word for it, and at least check out Honora. You may or may not like it, but I highly recommend it. Number 8. Longlegs. Now, I didn't think this would even end up on my list, to be honest. I mean, it's got its flaws, it's got some problems, but I really like the mood and atmosphere of this film, and I can't stop watching it just because of that. Now, I know there's other films that I may harp on that are very moody and atmospheric, but for me, this one does it. It's just kind of like, a lot of people compare it to Seven and Silence of the Lambs. It's kind of a good companion to those, I will say, but it's also its own beast. And, I really can't hear T-Rex and not think of Longlegs. So there's not a whole lot of plot in the movie, but like I said before, it's very atmospheric. Nicolas Cage is great. Micah Monroe is amazing. The direction's pretty damn good. The mood is amazing. I'm just, it was a good year for horror. Let's just say that. So number 8, Longlegs.
Mommy! Make me! And save me!
Number 7. I'd definitely say that number 7 was also a lot like Thelma in that it kind of came out of nowhere and surprised me in a good way, and I like that a lot when a movie does that. So number 7 is Adam Remeyer's Shake Shack. Number 7 is Adam Remeyer's Snack Shack, not Shake Shack. It was the end of last year, I believe, that I was already watching Adam Remeyer's Dinner in America and found it to be quite the trip, quite the cult classic. And so then I looked into what this guy was doing or had done since and found out there's a new movie called Snack Shack directed by him, and it's going to be on Amazon. My biggest problem with that is the only place that you can watch it, I believe, as of now. Snack Shack did not get a physical release, so it is only available digitally right now for purchase, for rental, but I'm really pissed I can't get a physical copy of this in my hands. Snack Shack is about two boys in the early 90s who go in on a local town's snack shack amongst the community pool for the summer, and they basically buy into this place and overspend on their budget and have to recoup that money, so they start selling stuff at the Snack Shack, hence the title.
I'm grounded. No more running free range all summer. I've got 1 week to find a legit job before my mom goes full tilt DEFCON. We need to bag some summer jobs. You think you can hook us up?
Snack Shack. I think they bid it out at the city council meeting.
I want to pitch you an idea. Okay?
A young woman gets involved and, the plot happens. And I'm not going to say much more besides that, as always. But basically, it takes you back to the early to mid 90s, gives you that young teen coming of age movie. And, I'm kind of a sucker for those when they're done really well. Mid 90s is one that I really love a lot. It's a little bit different than Dinner in America. It's a little more subtle on its deliveries. It's not as brash and in your face as Dinner in America is.
You bid $2,000 on the Snack Shack at the swimming pool.
Actually, we bid 3. It's a total shithole.
Yeah.
Sorry, shithole.
I also have to give it up to Gabriel LaBelle, who is the other male lead in this film. I really think he's coming into his own as an actor. He was great in The Fabelmans. He was also great in another movie that's going to end up a little bit sooner on this list than later. So if you want to watch Snack Shack, I guess you're going to need Amazon Prime. So, So if you can find a way to watch this, I would definitely give it a shot because it is a great coming-of-age teen comedy and one of my favorites of the year.
Want a little advice, homie? Make a move. Any move.
Give me a fucked up, kid.
You're unbelievable.
Number 6. Damien McCarthy's Oddity. Oddity was something I saw late in the year, and I was really glad to see it under the wire and was able to add it to this list. Oddity really goes old school with its horror. It goes what I was saying before about mood and atmosphere and suspense. Oddity does that times 10. I really didn't expect to like this movie as much as I did, and that right there should be all the recommendation you're going to need. But basically what happens is it's a murder mystery set in one particular setting. It's a house, but it's more like a castle. Something happens, somebody is murdered, and then their twin sister, comes to try and solve the murder.
You said I should visit on Danny's anniversary. My sister would never allow a strange man into her home in the middle of the night.
This is something that had me on the edge of my seat, and I don't say that lately about a lot of movies. In fact, horror movies in general, I'm desensitized. What can I say? This one actually got me, and it was very interesting to watch, and performances are great, mood and atmosphere. The plot is interesting, and, I kind of figured it out early on, but you know what? It's still kind of nice to watch it unravel, and that's why it's my number 6. Number 5. So number 5 is Saturday Night, another sleeper that I did not see coming this year, and it's also something that upon watching the trailer, I kind of groaned at first and wasn't really sure how this was going to play out. Then I found out it was directed by Jason Reitman, and I felt a little more comforted. Saturday Night is basically taking place in the hours leading up to the 11:30 premiere on Saturday night of Saturday Night Live.
Live from New York, it's Saturday night.
Saturday Night was something I was kind of worried for, especially in the portrayal of the actors who some are alive, some are not with us anymore. The guy playing Chevy Chase really had me kind of worried at first, but as the film goes on, my fears subsided and I just sunk into the movie like hanging out with old friends.
Chevy Chase, Gilda Radner, Dan Ike, how the fuck do you pronounce this?
Rolling. These can't be the right size.
Yeah, you're right. They should be a little bit smaller.
And now, weekend update.
Good evening.
You know, I just hung out with these characters and watched the chaos, the comedy, and the drama all unfold almost in real time, basically, because this film leads up to the moment of the premiere and, of course, includes some of the actual broadcast. Gabriel Bell is also in this film playing Lorne Michaels, and of course, he does a spectacular job. He is kind of the glue that holds the show in that time and this movie now in place. Honestly, I really didn't think I was going to like this at all, and hey, it made my top 5. So, you know, trust me, if you're into biopics, if you're into comedies, if you're into just, you know, like if you had any fears about this movie, don't worry about it. You'll enjoy it. Go watch it.
We just have to make it to air.
Live from New York.
Number 4. Number 4 was one of the best theater-going experiences I had in a long time, and that's because I was really excited to see this in a theater with a crowd, and even for a crowd at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, this one got some pretty good reactions out of people. Terrifier 3. Terrifier 3, we all know what it's about. Art the Clown returns, and mayhem ensues. With each one of these Terrifier films, it just feels like they're getting better and better, so this one was a delight to see in theaters. It was great to see some of the shock value gore in theaters and hear people react. Terrifier 3, Art the Clown. I mean, this was an indie movie that like broke records and, you know, made a shit ton of money. This movie comes along, breaks records. I'm really glad Terrifier 3 and Damien Leone have had the success that they've had, and I wish them more success. So bring on Terrifier 4. Number 3. There was no way that this film was not going to be on the top 10 list, and that is Late Night with the Devil. Late Night with the Devil stars David Dastmalchian in a career-defining performance, breakout performance. He plays the host of a failing talk show on broadcast TV in the 70s. His career isn't going too well, so he decides to have one big show where they contact the devil, hence the name of the movie, and things happen.
Now, here's Mr. Midnight, Jack Darrow.
Oh, good evening, night owls, and thank you for allowing me into your living rooms once again.
This reminds me a lot of many other found footage horror films like the WNUF Halloween special, which I love to death. So this was kind of like brother or sister to that. And Dastmalchian holds this movie together, and I know he won't get nominated, but man, he deserves some more recognition for this part. Oh man, this movie's great. If you're a horror fan, you need to check this out. Late Night with the Devil.
Gosh, I hope you love it. Please love it.
Number 2. Number 2 is Dune Part 2. Now, Dune Part 2, I had one of the best movie theater going experiences I've ever had. I saw this in IMAX. Man, what a treat. Because I missed out on the first one in IMAX because I don't remember if it was COVID or what. This is amazing. This is something I still continue to go back and watch time after time. In fact, I just watched it recently. I'm still not a fan of the ending of this, but you know, it still feels like the ending was still earned. It still feels tight and wrapped up. I just didn't like that they didn't include Paul's sister. So say what you will in the comments below, but I really dislike the ending of this film, but you know, it still works for the film as it is. So I'm okay with that. This is big budget sci-fi at its best. Denis Villeneuve is a very visionary director. I think, you know, I'd love to see part 3. I'd love to see director's cuts of these. I mean, there's so much to marvel at in these movies. Part 2 is pretty great. I still like to edge part 1 a little bit higher than part 2, but I don't know. Maybe that's just because of the ending. I don't know. But Dune Part 2, still very solid. Big budget sci-fi, done right. Well, mostly.
Mostly.
Number 1. What do you think it's going to be? You're probably thinking of the movie that I have left off this list. Oh no, everybody, it's number 1. You know me, you know, number 1 is The Substance.
Let's go.
Oh, do I have a lot to say about this, but I will spare you the details here. I do have a review on this channel, so please check it out. It's not a really comprehensive review, but it's a review nonetheless. I do gush about it there too. So The Substance just blew my fucking mind. And there's so much to say about this. There's so much discourse about this movie. I really haven't heard a lot of negative stuff, and that's great. I like that when something that's really, really good is really well regarded and just kind of does like an imprint on the culture. And that movie is making waves in the horror community. It's making waves. It's just making waves.
One single injection unlocks your DNA and will release another version of yourself.
Coralie Frejat's direction is impeccable. This movie is practically perfect in every way.
As I expected, practically perfect in every way.
You know, it's a little rough around the edges here and there, but honestly, the enjoyment factor overrules all that stuff. Demi Moore, career-defining performance. That's the problem I was talking about before, is that there's definitely some good competition out there, but I think Demi Moore really deserves that Oscar. She deserves a lot of recognition for this role. Demi fucking owns it. Margaret Qualley destroys it in this movie, also having a career-defining performance, willing to literally bear it all, as well as Demi, for the role. And, you know, honestly, that takes a lot of guts. The direction's tight. The pacing on this movie is tight. The themes are there. There's horror movie references. It's just, it's my number 1 of the year, and you're not going to change my mind. I mean, there's just so much to love in it, and I can't gush about it too much longer. Check out my review, The Substance. I love it. Best movie of the year. Brava. Fuck yeah.
Would you like to stop? Would you like to stop? Would you like to stop? Would you like to stop?
I'm fine. Everything's fine.
Well, it wouldn't be a winner's list without a loser's list. Now, I still believe that we should be critical of film, so I'm going to present you in order from least worst to worst of my top 5 worst films of the year. And that's because there's a lot of films that I just didn't bother to see, like the Crow remake. I'm not going to go fucking watch that. The original movie stands alone. That's all you need. I'm not going to go watch Mufasa, but I'm sure it would be on this list if I saw it. You know, there's a lot of things that I didn't like, Nosferatu, that didn't make it on this list because they weren't offensively bad. This is where a lot of these will spark some discourse. So crack those typing fingers and get ready to battle me in the comments. Number 5. I have no intention of really like shitting on this movie. It's just, it really felt like a, I don't even know how to even put it into words anymore, but number 5 is Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis. A lot of people have been calling it Megaflopolis. Basically, I think Coppola swung for the fences and missed. And I think it's not an offensively bad movie, but it was bad enough to make me put it at the end of this list as my least offensive film. But the performances are all there. Story is not all there.
What do you think of this boner I got?
There's a lot that needs to be condensed. There's some weirdness that I do like, and that's why I'm not completely shitting on this, but there's, you know, there's elements that I think would work better in another film, or just a shorter film, or a less, you know, grandiose film, maybe scale it back a little.
Rather than just design the form or shape of an object, we can actually design it.
But, you know, I can't completely crap on this one, so, you know, 5 is Megalopolis. Number 4. Trap by M. Night Shyamalan. So Trap was something I was curious to see because I wanted to see the return of Josh Hartnett. I'm a fan of the 90s, so of course I want to see him back in a role. And, you know, What he was given, I think he was fine. There's nothing wrong with his performance in this film. I just think the film was very bloated, not thought through at all. There's a lot of just silly things that happen.
What's with all the police everywhere? I'm not supposed to tell. You know the butcher? The freaking nut job that goes around chopping people up? But the feds heard that he's gonna be here today. So they set up a trap for him. This whole concert? It's a trap.
Night Shyamalan is a director he got a lot of hits, but he's got a lot of misses. So I just rank this in with the misses and just keep watching the hits. So Trap is about a trap that's set at a concert for the serial killer. And the serial killer is there with his daughter. And, you know, I won't say much more because if you are interested in seeing this, you might enjoy it. Your mileage may vary, but honestly, this movie just goes off the rails in silliness for me, so I cannot fully recommend it at all, and it belongs on this list. There's a lot of stupid things that happen throughout this movie. They're just stupid things that would never happen in real life. Just, oh man. Number 3, Borderlands. Now, I don't mean to completely shit all over this movie either, and I know the internet is doing that very well on its own. This was just a mess. I did hear from a source that it was beyond Eli Roth's control, a lot of it, so I think his direction would have been different than what we got. Studio interference, things like that. Even then, I still don't know what that film would look like if things had went differently, but what we got, I just didn't love. It was a Guardians of the Galaxy copy. It tried to be funny in several places where it was not. It wasn't offensive, it was just like we've seen it, and it wasn't funny. It's just that funny joke that you've heard before, but the discount version of it. So can't recommend Borderlands unless you want to fall asleep, and fuck studio interference. Number 2. Number 2 is surprisingly on a lot of other people's top 10 lists of the year. I couldn't stand this film. Civil War by Alex Garland. Now, Alex Garland started out to me as a fine filmmaker, and his last few films have just not resonated with me at all, and I know I'm not alone. Civil War for me was no different. I was almost offended by this, just at how stupid it was, just at how idiotic things happened in it. The acting was fine, it was just the story, the plot, what they had to do.
Today I can announce that the so-called Western forces of Texas and California have suffered a very great loss.
No!
California would never be in alliance with Texas in a real civil war. For fuck's sake. Yeah, there was just a lot of things I couldn't believe, and the way it ended was just silly in a lot of ways, and I hadn't grown so hard since watching the number 1 movie on this list. Number 1. Well, it's no surprise. Number 1 is Joker, Folly of You, because it was a folly of poo. And, you know, many movies in history have said fuck you to the studios and even to the audience. But this movie does it both in a way that's offensive. I knew from the opening moments of this film that we were getting a different animal from the first film. And, you know, there's a little bit about the history of how this film got made, and, you know, it all makes sense. You know, studio backs up a big truck of money until Todd Phillips says, yeah, fine, I'll direct it, and he begrudgingly directs it and does it as a prank, a troll, and, you know, a middle finger to the studio and the audience who liked the first film. And in a small way, I kind of respect that, but at the same time, we're the ones supporting your movie. We're the ones supporting the studio who let you make the movie. You can't tell your audience to piss off. You just can't. You know, the one thing I will say about it that's good is the courtroom sequence was okay. But at the same time, it destroyed some lore that the first film had set up. I don't know. It just, that was the one part where I was kind of into it. And I think that's where everyone else was into it for that short amount of time. But other than that, it was terrible. You know, and no hatred towards Joaquin or Lady Gaga. I mean, they're fine, you know, whatever. That's literally the movie's like possibly strongest point is their acting. It's just everything they were given was shit. I expect to see this on a lot of worst of lists this year, unless you're Quentin Tarantino. Well, Before I forget, there were a few honorable mentions this year. More than I thought there would be, but let's just jump right into those right away. The first one is In a Violent Nature. Now, originally this was on my top 10, but you know, as things move around and as things get pushed around, something had to get edged out of the top 10, so unfortunately this was it. In a Violent Nature was very inventive in the way that it told the story of, it was basically a Friday the 13th movie from the point of view of the killer, and I liked how it took its time. I know a lot of people didn't, but I really liked how it took its time and did the Jason story, but from a different perspective and in a different way. Really worth your time if you're in for some really gruesome kills, and not worth your time if you're not in for a slow burn. So I recommend In a Violent Nature. Next up is Smile 2. Now, Smile 2, I think I like a lot better than the original Smile because this film expands on the lore. It gives us something, you know, we know what the premise is more or less, and this gives us the meat of the story. Naomi Scott, whew, wow, what a performance out of her. Carries this movie on her shoulders. I love it. This movie did some things different than the first one, which is why I liked it. They also found a way to wrap up some loose ends from the first movie, which I thought was a very interesting first scene for a sequel like this. This is one of those horror films that has really stayed on my mind since I saw it over a month and a half ago. And to be honest, I'm really ready to watch it again because I just enjoyed it that much. Just narrowly missed cracking that top 10, just like In a Violent Nature. It was very, very close. But of course, some things had to fall by the wayside. So I wholeheartedly recommend Smile 2. Next up is a film that I think didn't get the love that I think it should have gotten, and that was Fall Guy. Fall Guy with Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt. Yeah, it's silly. It's about Hollywood stuntmen and things like that. I just found it to be fun. It wasn't anything that, you know, it wasn't anything too deep for my brain. It wasn't helping me learn profound life lessons or anything. It was just an entertaining as hell, fun action comedy. And for my dollar, hey, Fall Guy was probably the action comedy of the year. And lastly, we have Maxine, the third film in the Ty West X trilogy. This was something that was originally on my list of top 10, but it was a lot easier to knock this one down as opposed to In a Violent Nature and Smile 2. I really didn't like the ending of this one. Everything else was pretty much, for the most part, good. Mia Goth performance, great, amazing, no problems there. Everyone else, fine. The direction, fine. The production design was really, really nice. You really got that sleazy 80s Los Angeles feel. I loved it. It reminded me of cult classics like Angel and, God, I'm blanking on it right now. Savage Streets is the name of the movie. Maxine starts out fine. There's some, you know, little issues with it I have here and there with some of the pacing, but really where it fell apart for me was the ending. It's not a huge spoiler to say that there's kind of a shootout near the end of the film, and it got really kind of cheesy, like this doesn't belong in this film. The so-called villain of the film, it's really easy to predict who that is if you've seen the other films and if you're paying attention. To me, it's the weakest in the trilogy, but there's still an overall enjoyment there that I really found myself going back to and watching this movie a couple more times just to make sure that I wasn't completely crazy by leaving it off my list just because I wasn't fond of the ending. I mean, I wasn't fond of Dune Part 2's ending either, but the rest of that film just makes up for that. So that's it for my runners-up. What did you think? Let me know in the comments below.
Yeah? Blow me.
Boy, oh boy, what a mixed bag of movies we got this year. Well, there is no surprise in saying that 2025 already has some possible favorites on the horizon. It's also got some possible misses I see on the horizon. Captain America, I'm looking at you. Let's just see what 2025 brings and look back on 2024 as fondly as we can. So don't forget to like this video, share, subscribe to the channel, and keep those eyes red, baby. See you next year.
There's a certain species of turtle that can screw for 3 days without stopping.
You are it, Dad.
Yes.
Done.